Okay, Chair?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here, for the executive committee of the Peninsula Clean Energy Authority. Here's our agenda. City clerk Walker, or, sorry, you're not city clerk.
Oh.
Board.
I heard you say sitting clerk.
Oh,
It's like, yes, that's me. When I call your jurisdiction, if you'll please state your name, Atherton,
Rick DeVoe.
you, Belmont,
Tom Keon.
Brisbane,
Colleen Mackin.
Burlingame,
Desiree Claire.
thank you, Hillsborough,
Leslie Ragsdale.
Menlo Park,
Betsy Ash.
thank you. Millbrae, give me 1 second, let me confirm that Director Fung is online. Director Fung, let me move you over to a panelist so you'll be able to unmute. I see your hand raised.
Ladies and gentlemen of PC, this is Andrews Fung from Millbrae.
Wonderful, thank you. San Bruno,
Morning, Medina.
San Carlos. Okay, we have a quorum. Our next item on the agenda is public comment for items that are not on the agenda. If anybody in the room or online has public comment, if you'll please raise your hand. But I don't believe we have any members of the public online. Our next item on the agenda is an action to set the agenda and to approve the consent agenda items.
So moved.
Director Nash,
Second.
Director Mackin. First and second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. Atherton,
Yes.
Belmont,
Yes.
Brisbane,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Yes.
Menlo Park,
Yes.
Millbrae,
Aye.
San Bruno,
Yes.
San Carlos. Thank you. Motion passes. Our next item on the agenda is the chair report. Chair Medina.
I really don't have too much to report on. Looking forward to an event coming up tomorrow. I'll leave you on a cliffhanger there. How about that?
Is it happening tomorrow? Or Thursday?
Tomorrow.
Oh, Brisbane?
Okay, got everybody's attention now.
Which event is that?
That is really working. There's all kinds of stuff happening, but that's my
Yes, there
report.
is.
Great. CEO report.
Great. I don't have a slide for this. I just have a couple quick things. First of all, to say thank you all for the event. It's a ribbon cutting for a GovPV project in Brisbane,
Thank you.
which is great. And unfortunately, I won't be there with you all tomorrow, but others will. And then I do want to let you know the board survey that we referenced at the last board meeting, that'll be coming out today, I think, right, Nellie? And thank you to Chair Medina and Vice Chair Ragsdale for your comments on that. So that'll be coming today. Do want to also let you know that the rollout of our new name is beginning this week with very segmented, targeted emails to begin letting folks know about it, including our vendors and stakeholder partners. That's our first focus before rolling out to the public. The Secretary of State has certified the new name, so we are official. We are not going to be officially using the new name until July 1. That's sort of our public cutover, but it's all beginning to happen, and I have to say, so much work behind the scenes, and so far so good, and let's keep that going. Later this week, there will also be an event that Vice Chair Ragsdale and Chair Medina will be attending with me and Leilani, which is the Best Places to Work Awards ceremony. So I don't know what we'll have to bring to the office to show you all, but should be good. And then next week, you're busy with us. Thank you. Chair Medina and Director DeGolia will be coming with me to Albuquerque for the Sunzia ribbon cutting, which is a big deal for us. That's 200 megawatts of solar, and there are primarily wind.
Yes.
Thank you. Primarily CCA off-takers of that project, and a brand new transmission line into California to support it. So thank you all for coming. And that will wrap up my report. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Public comment.
Looking for public comment? Anybody in the room? Nope. No public comment in the room?
No, mine.
No.
Our next item will be recommend to the Board of Directors approval of the fiscal year 2026 to 2027 budget, an action item presented by Nick Bajor, the Chief Financial Officer.
Morning, everyone. As Sean reminded me, I'm sort of the main show today between budget and rates. I don't envision us using up the full hour and a half. But I'll go as slow as you guys want, answer any questions you want. But I also don't want to waste your guys' time. So before I begin, wanted to recognize Haley, who's here with me. Haley works with me on the budget. She really does the budget, to be honest. Coming back from maternity leave a couple months ago, and this has been her primary, almost only responsibility. So we will be tag teaming. She'll hopefully be able to answer questions if I can. So I just want to recognize Haley on the budget side. So quick update. Starting a couple years ago, we've really been doing a bottoms-up budgeting approach, almost like a zero-based budgeting, for those of you familiar with that term. We've incorporated cross-departmental process where we bring all the department heads together, share where we're spending, make trade-offs as appropriate, reduce as needed. We've also incorporated DAI principles into our budgeting process. We make sure we ask all department heads and ensure that they're incorporating DAI into their budget thinking and where they're allocating dollars. These include things like making sure a large portion of our program spend is allocated to income qualified and disadvantaged communities, ensuring that we're targeting diverse owned firms in our procurement decisions through RFPs or other ways, and also ensuring that we have a diverse employee base. That's a big portion of our costs. So making sure they're trained as well. So want to just lay that out. For the first time, we're always trying to improve the process. And for the first time this year, we rolled out department-specific budgets. Not sure why we didn't have them before. We were a small company, didn't have a ton of departments, but seemed like a much needed improvement to increase accountability, transparency. And so that was a sort of a first time effort for this year, and we'll be tracking that over the next fiscal year. Not really a board or executive committee impact, but it is a change for our department heads. Now they'll really be accountable to hitting cost targets or making sure they're under cost targets. As far as just a background, we presented almost this exact budget to the Audit and Finance Committee on May 11th. Actually, there's no overlap other than Donna, who's not here, so she doesn't have to sit through two of the exact same presentations or very similar presentations. I'd say the committee was supportive. They really had no suggested changes. Since that meeting, which was a month ago, we've made tweaks as we always do, incorporating new updated information. Net, I would say not a significant change by any means, and actually a slight decrease in costs. So they went the right way or the better way. And that's largely due to lower cost of energy forecasts. We're obviously always updating based on markets and new information. Budgets and rates in this presentation, while they are connected because we're doing cost of service rate making, we've separated them for the purpose of this presentation. So we're first asking this board, or excuse me, this executive committee to approve the appropriation of the budget, and then we'll talk about rates. They are connected, but we've sort of separated that decision. So before I get into rates, we're just going to talk about the costs, but there will obviously be a separate discussion with Justin, who will help me with to incorporate what rates we think are appropriate to make sure we can cover our costs. And then just the final step of this journey is that we will be presenting this budget and any changes that you suggest, or as well as any new information we uncover over the next few weeks to our board, through the board, or in 2 weeks on June 25th. So that's just a background on where we are. Any questions before I get into the numbers? And tell me if I'm going too fast, too slow. I'm happy to tweak as needed. Okay, so we have several pages here that lay out the various cost categories for the agency. I'm going to just hopefully level set on what you're going to see on the page, because each of the pages are a similar structure. So hopefully it's familiarize yourself. So across by columns, we've got fiscal year 25. That's just a reference point. That's a year, almost 2 years ago at this point, or a year ago, I guess. Fiscal year 26 is the year we're in right now. As a reminder, we're in June fiscal year end. This incorporates basically 9 months of actual results through March. and then the last 3 months of our budget. So it's our estimate of where we're gonna come out for the year. We won't know for sure for a couple more months, but this is our latest estimate. And then the most important column is the one on the right, which is the budget. These are the budgeted costs that we're asking you and soon to be the board to approve. Cost of energy, this is our first cost category, as you all know, by far in a way our largest cost category. It's, I think, about 90% of cost depending on the year. The good news here is we've seen a continually decrease in these costs. Roy and his team do an incredible job managing these costs, managing the budget, but we are largely beholden to the markets. And so we've had a decreasing energy market over the last few years, and we benefited from that on our cost of energy. I will say, and we'll talk about this when we talk about rates, it's kind of a good news, bad news, more good news. But just to remind everyone, lower energy prices do result in lower cost of energy, but they have a secondary impact, a negative impact on the PCIA. And so our customers end up having to pay that cost, and that will go into our rate setting approach. So just good for cost of energy, bad. I know these aren't really technical terms, quote, quote, bad for the PCIA. The budget here and then the next 4 years of forecast, which I haven't shown yet, are all based on a forward price curve. You know, we pay firms to provide multiple data points, which we use to come up with estimated prices. We've assumed 2% load growth. That's lower than some of our peers and what you hear in the newspapers across the country. We don't expect a huge data center growth in our service territory. So 2% is kind of modest economic growth, some electrification, some new customers. The categories here, you can see we've got 5 categories. And just to remind everyone, energy is the electrons, electricity cost. Capacity is largely a compliance cost, not exclusively, but that is resource adequacy, a term you've all heard about, as well as a lot of our storage costs to make sure we have enough resources to meet peak demands. REC and GHG free, these are the attributes that we sometimes have to buy to make sure we're meeting our targets and our requirements. We're actually been a net seller of these as our PPAs come online because we get these attributes often through our PPAs. We don't have to go out and buy them separately. And Roy gave that great presentation last couple weeks ago, I think, on these products. Others is small dollar amount. It's mostly net energy metering, so the cost that we pay for some of our customers, as well as forecast and scheduling costs we pay, so not really related to exactly electrons. And then contingency. We've historically, I think, well, actually a couple of years ago, started putting in a contingency in cost of energy. Markets are incredibly volatile. We do our best guess estimate to forecast them, but we could get heat waves, which are much beyond our control. This is probably the most likely example where not only does the prices skyrocket, but also the volume skyrockets. And so we've included a appropriate contingency. We've assumed $20 million in the budget year. That's around 7% of our energy costs. It's a little less than we historically have targeted, around 10%, but we think it's appropriate because we've hedged a lot of our energy. We think that's an appropriate cushion. We feel comfortable with that. So anyway, so those are the categories. You can see the ups and downs. Most of them are downs. As I said, we've been the beneficiary of a declining energy prices. Energy prices we expect to go down. That's even assuming the slight load growth. Capacity costs are a slight increase, largely due to some of our storage contracts coming online. REC GHG free, we are actually expected to be a net seller here as our PPAs come online and we get those RECs. Basically, with that electricity, we've been able to monetize some of the extra RECs we have and sort of realize some extra revenue. Other is basically flat. And then I mentioned contingency of about $20 million. You may ask in fiscal year 26, why is there a contingency? That's basically the 3 months of contingency, which where we are right now on June 8th, I don't expect us to have to use those. So there could be a heat wave in the next week or two. So the net result of all that is about $300 million cost of energy. It's essentially flat, slightly down from this current year we're in, and a significant decrease from fiscal year 25. Any questions on any of that cost of energy? Okay, hearing none, I'll move on. And Roy is probably on the line if we have any questions that I can't answer. Okay, next cost categories are operating expenses. These, I'd like to think we have a little more control over the cost of energy because for obvious reasons, but they represent a smaller percentage. You know, the last cost of energy was 300 million. These are 32.5 is the budget. You can see, not immaterial, but a lot smaller than the cost of energy. Same layout, fiscal year 25, 26, and then the key number is fiscal year 27. I will say that these operating expenses exclude program spend, which I'm going to show you on the next page, so just to bear in mind. The good news here is we've seen growth moderating from 33% to 9% to a current budget forecast of about 6%, so slightly a little bit higher than inflation. We have had to catch up on some of our sort of back office operational expenses over the last few years that you're all well aware of, whether that was hiring more employees, investing in software, bulking up sort of much needed need. That's sort of the growth phase is largely done. And so now we're in more of a steady state. And that's what we see with the 6% growth. There's no huge numbers that jump out here. Compensation, we are seeing an increase that's largely due to just salary escalation. We've assumed at 5%. It may be slightly different than that. That's inflation plus some merit. I will say for the first time, I think in the history of the company, we are not forecasting any headcount growth. As I said, that growth phase is largely behind us. And so we're not expecting to add any net new headcount. We may have some turnover if people leave and we'll replace them, but no new headcount. The other cost categories, some modest increase, I would say on the consulting legal, a lot of the consulting cost is the support of the new name rollout. Want to make sure we get that news out there. That's offset a little bit by less legal fees as we brought the general counsel position in-house. So there were some savings there. We also have some consulting support for our innovation strategies group, which is a largely new group. Didn't really exist much in fiscal year 26, a little bit. Communication spend, modest increase there, again, to support programs, largely the home upgrade program, which we really expect to ramp up next year. And then general administrative is kind of a catch-all, includes software costs, the largest category there. So we've seen that increase as we've adopted technology to make us more efficient. There's some reclassification of investment management fees from consulting into that category. So that's sort of just geography. And some of the increase is offset by 6 months of free rent we're getting on the new office space. So that rolls into the general administrative category. Any questions on these categories? Okay, hopefully I'm not boring you all. Okay.
Definitely not boring.
That's
Okay.
Good to know. It's just clear.
Okay, good. Next category is program expense, and I added here reimbursements because this is a category where we actually get some money back in the door through our program spend. So some of these are sort of self-funding. This is Raphael's department. Obviously, this is how he and his team categorize their spend. You've seen the wheel that he shows. These are the categories. So the building spend, home upgrade, that is the largest driver there. We are really expecting that to pick up a little bit this current year, but more so next year as we put a lot of money behind that program. Electric vehicles is kind of an up and down story there. We saw a huge uptick in e-bike volume in the current year. So that's driving some of that increase in fiscal year 26. We are capping that application. So that's why we see a slight decrease in fiscal year 27. The rest of our EV program, the charging is largely stable. So not much growth. Distributed energy is a small number amount, and we'll see that dollar increase in the out years, but in the current budget year, it's only $400,000. And then energy efficiency, this is again, you don't see it on this page because I'm just showing fiscal year 27, but we do expect this category to increase. But this is largely offset by funding. If you look at the bottom part of the table, funding that we expect to receive next year from the CPUC to basically pay for the energy efficiency program. This is an application you've probably heard about, we made, and we have received funding for, so.
Not yet.
Not yet, okay,
We'll
sorry.
hear in 2027.
Okay. So here you can see the total expense increasing slightly, but when you add in the reimbursements, largely from the energy efficiency funding, it's actually a slight decrease in net expense. And so this is Raphael's area, and probably what we expect to see sort of in the next few years as well. Not a huge increase, but not a decrease as well. My first question.
So if the grant doesn't come through, that CPUC funding doesn't come through, does that mean that there will be less expenses that the program will be?
Yes.
Well,
We won't spend until we get the approval of the funding.
so that's right.
Including staffing.
Yeah.
Not a question, just a comment. So obviously, the greatest expense increases on buildings in each of the next 2 years. And I think that as we get to rates, we're gonna have to look closely at it because because the purpose of our building expense is to drive down greenhouse gas generation and to encourage people to convert from natural gas over to electricity and a variety of appliances. But obviously, to the extent that rates go up, that's going to work against people making those decisions. And I believe that's the priority, because if in fact we're setting the stage that causes people not to make the conversion because of cost, they're not going to make it. And if we are driving those rates because we're investing in a program that would support that conversion, then we're working against ourselves. So we just have to look at it. And it's obviously a balancing issue that we have to deal with. It's the reality.
I just want to comment that gas rates are also going up. So one of the things we need to do is not look at the electricity, obviously, in its own silo, but look at.
But with gas rates going up for us is a good thing because it's going to encourage people to convert.
Precisely, but if electricity
issue is
rates
if
go up
electric-
and people, I don't necessarily think that means that we'll have less building conversions because the gas rates are also going up.
I think it's just something to look at holistically.
Precisely.
I think your point is that we absolutely today don't want to do stuff that is costing our customers money to electrify. And there are plenty of examples and some studies done that show that it doesn't. But then there are examples that people have in real time where it has. So it is something that we will watch.
I was just gonna comment, echoing what Rick said, this really is the time to invest in buildings. As people are grappling with all kinds of escalating costs and they're looking for some way to find stability. And the inertia about making these big changes, I think we're doing a good job at sending the message that this is the time to do it and to not wait. Because I've heard more and more from people going, oh, I'm thinking now, even though I've still got life on my gas water heater, to do it. The effect on us, though, we've got to be really careful because our revenues are going to go down. The more we get energy efficient, everything online, it's going to be a balancing act. So I agree with you, but I'm glad to see the investment in buildings. I think that's wise.
Can I add one quick comment though, I think there's a reality check in this and we deal with it every year. The home upgrade program is our, sort of signature, I would say, high touch, high value program to the customers who receive it. It is not an inexpensive proposition. And so it is something that we've talked about monitoring. It's also very hard to sometimes get customers that want to go through that entire thing. So some of this, I think, is also in support of what's happening in Menlo Park. But traditionally, we haven't done the whole spend on this. Just there's so many different moving parts and we've got to have a willing customer base. So we'll keep track of it and come back to you.
Just want to add that the more we're finding out about the detrimental costs of gas in your homes and the emissions, the more I think we'll see people.
The more what?
The more I think we will see more and more people
Electrify.
electrifying as you find out about the health risks.
Especially as systems fail. I think more people now, instead of going back to or staying with the status quo, they're using the opportunity to move forward.
This is a hard question. Do we have any idea, or are we starting to look at PG&E decommissioning gas lines? So we know in our territory of customers that we'll be assuming more of the electrical.
I'm sure that Raphael's team is doing that just because they're just data wonks all the time. I don't know how that's being used though, so we can get back to you on that.
I have a comment, and I appreciate Rick bringing up the cost of electricity, which is gonna affect all of us in one way or the other, and those that are looking to analyze the cost of electrification. I was hoping, or perhaps the question then is, for somebody that's interested in this, is there something that can be shown online that based on today's rates and the increases in gas, like, so should I do it or not? And it would spell out your breaking point that, well, maybe it costs you a little bit more money this year, or, you know, it's kind of even. So whatever that number is, it helps our customers make that decision, like, okay, instead of they do something and then they get upset and start telling their neighbors, hey, my bill went up crazy. And it's like, well, it went up crazy also because you're using air conditioning now, right? So,
Or you're on the wrong rate. That happens too.
okay, so all these things of, you know, these assurances and reminders to the public that these are the things to look at and help you make, and how can we help them make a better decision, I think is.
We have a staffer that does that with Gabby Ibarra, I believe is her last name. Forgive me, Gabby. She's our electrification concierge.
Mhm.
So all of these projects, even the DIY projects that customers call in about,
Mhm.
they can crunch the numbers, run some of the spreadsheets around what they think it will cost. Now, a lot of that, of course, is gonna be subject to different rate categories.
If I can just add on to that, so that's great that they're doing that,
Yeah.
but perhaps we could have a presentation of how that really works, that we
Sure.
could talk about it in our meeting, that here's somebody that's looking at doing X, Y, and Z, right? And then here are the costs, and then it's online, and I can be better informed about it, because
Sure.
right now I would have to go to there and kind of go through it, which I considered, but just wanted to share that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A calculator too
Yeah, yeah,
online
yeah.
that people could do for themselves, but also making it clear that there is a concierge who will help them.
Exactly.
I'm sure.
I was just gonna echo what you're saying in that the sticker shock up front, people constantly are asking me, oh, you did this, how? It is a case study showing amortizing the cost up front, yes, but look at the long range of how this is gonna pan out.
I see Raphael up there. I don't know if
Yep.
you wanted to add anything. I do think Raphael can probably add on this, there is savings immediately from switching. The problem is the upfront costs. We have the programs where we do the upfront costs entirely for low income customers, and that's a no brainer, but for people, it's gonna be hard to show the math. Just economic, they have to have other reasons for the environment, but Raphael, I see just came off you.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So for most customers, most of the time, if you look at complete electrification of single family homes, we're seeing savings on the order of $30 a month. We're continually updating those analyses as new rates go into effect. And also, though we realize that there are some additional supports that customers need, and in particular, we are now looking at ways of bringing additional financing options to customers. So that's a major push, and certainly would be happy to speak to that at a board meeting with regards to personalized support and all these other elements that we're bringing in.
Director Nash, I believe, had a question.
Just wanted to state, I want to continue to say we need to look at what the alternative is. For example, how much would they be spending on gas? Gas rates do go up. I just saw in one of my fellow council members' newsletters, he completely electrified his home. He wrote about it in his newsletter and then said how it ultimately cost $11,000, which I think he's happy about. He had to do a panel upgrade and some other things. But again, he now has a completely new set of appliances, of furnace and all of that. So there's also the balance of not spending that money when you have to upgrade your gas. You know, if you were to do it with gas or have to upgrade your appliances later, you're starting out, you're getting a lot of benefit. So I just want to continue to push that it's not just this upfront cost, you're also getting many benefits from it. Having said that, the other thing which I'm hearing from people is we need to make sure that we're setting the expectation for noise because they are noisier, both inside and outside. And also for the temperature. I'm hearing from people and we experience it too. In your garage, all of a sudden it's much cooler, which can be wonderful on some days and it's of concern. So just making sure people are going into this with their eyes wide open.
And one more thing to add, that because I've had several residents talk to me about converting their appliances. And the big hurdle are those who really don't have a property suitable for solar. And they go, this is gonna cost me a fortune in electricity.
Because they're not able to offset it.
They're
I
not
get
able
it.
to offset. So
Yeah.
then you're trying to sell of these are much more energy efficient.
Yeah.
The gas is gonna go higher. You don't want to be locked into gas in the future.
Great,
One
great,
thing
great
I'll
question.
add, just some context, I don't have any of these pages, the original budget. But I will say, just to follow on what Sean said, this is a category that we've had almost difficult time spending the money, which is weird as a CFO. I'm usually trying to rein in the cost, so like, just as a data point, the budgeted costs for fiscal year 26 were, I think, there's Haley, I think about $20 million, $21 million. So largely due to the home upgrade, which was delayed until next year. So we try to get the money out the door. That's what our marketing team's effort to do, is get the word out, but been historically hard to spend. And we think for fiscal year 27, we've come up with an appropriate budget, which we should be more right on target. Okay, next page. I only have 2 more pages on the budget side, and then we'll get into rates. Oh, excuse me. So capital expense, this is a category for those of you who aren't accountants. You might say, what's the difference between capital and expense? It doesn't really matter that much because they're both money going out the door, but we treat them differently. Expenses, which is basically what we've been talking about before, are basically monies that you spend in a current year. Everything we've talked about, cost of energy, compensation, consulting costs. Capital expense are typically, and an accountant would get mad at me for describing it this way, but are long-term assets. So putting, building a house, putting steel in the ground, putting money to work that you may get repaid over multiple years. So it's a different category, but we want to make it's not insignificant dollars. So we wanted to make sure we had a page devoted to it. Cost category, the capital cost categories here. The first one is on-bill financing. I'm guessing you're all familiar with this program. This is where we're basically lending money to customers to make these upgrades, and they pay us back. So it's not an expense, it's basically just a loan. That's why it's treated as capital. We expect this program, and see, that's why you see at the top, it's expense money going out the door, and then you can see in the bottom, the reimbursement coming back in. We expect, as we matured this program, starting, I think, in fiscal year 28 and beyond, it to basically be self-funding. We put a lot of money out the door, and those customers are paying back every day, every month. And so it's sort of largely self-funding out and in. Gov PV Capital, this is, you're all familiar with the Gov PV program. This is putting, building assets, putting pole panels on roofs. You can see the dollars there, 7.4 in fiscal year 25, 12 million in this current year. Fiscal year, for the budget year, we're forecasting 5.7 million. This is Gov PV 3. Which is, I think, only 5 systems, Raphael, as well as adding batteries to some of the systems in Gov PV 1 and Gov PV 2. So that's what you see there. We don't expect to be spending any more of our capital for the Gov PV program in the out years. Again, I don't have beyond fiscal year 27 because we're talking to various financiers about them financing it. So that's the best part, when you can use other people's money. We also want to get the money coming in. And that, the Gov PV revenues, which you see down below, this is the PPA payments that all of you make for the electricity. And so it's not exactly offsetting. That's a 20-year time frame of Gov PV revenues coming in. The next category is new office capital. This will be a one and done cost category, hopefully. This is the cost that we have to spend to build out the new office, which you've all heard about. It's made up of about $500,000 of tenant improvements. We are getting about $900,000 from the landlord. So this is the cost above that, which we shared with you, I think, last month. And that we expect to start next month. We also have to buy new AV equipment, some new furniture, although we're gonna be taking a lot of what we have in this room and in other rooms. So that's about $600,000. And there weren't sufficient EV chargers in the new office, so we committed to spending $100,000 for, I think it's 10 spaces, right, Nellie? And so all that adds up to about $1.2 million. I will say that that is partially offset by the 6 months free rent that we're getting. You saw that benefit in the expense category that I mentioned before. And that's worth about $400,000. So net, it's about $800,000. That's so the top portion is the capital going out the door, money going out the door. The next session is we call reimbursements. That's money coming in. I've already talked about on-bill financing and then the GovPV PPA revenues coming in. The last thing I'll mention is the investment tax credit. We are expecting a big check, so to speak. It is actually a check from the government this next year of about $7.5 million. That's for money spent on GovPV1 and GovPV2. So it's not something that's recurring, but that'll help our cash position. So you can see
We
that.
won't be getting any more of that.
Yeah, unless we change the president. So that is capital. Where you do see capital show up on the income statement is depreciation expense. This is where we're basically amortize the capital costs over the life of the asset. So for the GovPV program, it's 20 years. For the new office stuff, it's 8 years, the life of the lease.
Can I add just one quick thing?
Yeah.
On the office expense. Hopefully, we're gonna see how AV and furniture comes in. Hopefully, it won't be quite 600K. We're hopeful that maybe it's closer to 5, or something like that, but we'll keep you posted. There's also a few things when we went through the budget and what we call value engineered it, meaning we took things off line by line. There are a few things that we set aside in our minds as sort of phase 2. Some, wall treatments and things like that. That if we do have enough capital available and we haven't spent it, we can come back to you and maybe do some of those phase 2 things up front. Easier to get stuff done now than to have contractors come back later. So we're managing through that and we'll keep it posted.
For the EV chargers, will they have ongoing expenses or are people gonna be paying to charge their, like a charge point?
No, we will, as we do here, we will pay for people, our
You get
employees.
2 hours.
Okay,
And that would show up in the G&A. I mean, it's not immaterial, it's not a
then
huge
you
dollar
pay.
amount.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what our employee benefits we pay for charging,
okay.
Not the whole time though,
not the whole time.
just 2 hours.
They get 2 hours.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 hours free.
Yeah.
It's,
It's nice.
There's like a code, they plug it in or.
Okay, last page before we move
Did you
to
have a
rate.
sorry, Director DeBon, no? Okay.
Okay, so this is all the costs together. Again, this is just the cost side of the equation. And so all these numbers that I've shared, you hopefully add up to what's on this page. They do, trust me. And you can see the cost of energy, that's the $300 million I mentioned. Operating expense is both those operating expenses on that one page plus the program's expenses, and I separated them out, plus depreciation expense. There are some monies coming back in that we sort of consider to offset to our costs. We've got non-electricity revenues, so those are the GovPV PPA revenue. It's DAC GT reimbursement we get from the CPUC. It's delayed damages for, I mean, we don't expect this every year, but in the next year, we are expecting or we do know that one of our PPAs is gonna be offline for about a year, so we're getting, I think, about $4 million. That's included in that non-electricity revenue. Non-operating income is.
Sorry, Nick, really
sorry.
quick. The revenue we get in from the 0% loans. The payback of those loans. does
That
show
actually
up there?
not showed up on the expense, that's on
I
the
see.
capital side, like how GovPV capital.
Got it, okay, thank you.
Non-operating income is mostly interest income on our cash balance, but it's also the ITC that you saw on the other page. That's why it's so much higher next year. That includes $7.5 million there. And then the Eco 100 revenues is the 1 cent premium we collect for the 100% product. So you take the costs, you subtract the revenues, quote unquote revenues, non-electricity revenues coming in, and we come up with a net cost of $315.9 million. We also consider this our revenue requirement. This is basically the cost, the net cost we need to run the organization and what we want to collect in rates to cover those costs, which we'll talk about in the next section. The good news is it's a decrease, 2% from this current year. And this current year is actually a 14% decrease from the year before. So we've seen a lot of that is due to cost of energy. So it could have gone the other direction, so I don't want to take credit for that. But that is, we're wind at our back. But that is driving the $316 million. And so our recommendation is for you to recommend to the board approval of the fiscal year 27 budget, which is, I said, $315.9 million. It's a 2% decrease. And we'll get to rates in the next section. It's kind of weird to separate it, but we will be setting rates according to a cost of service approach to collect enough rates plus the rate stabilization fund to cover the 315.9.
I had a question. Is there, this may be a Mark question. Is there a concern, that the investment tax credit that even though it's been promised that it will be pulled away?
I guess never say never. We did get the first check from GovPV1 right on time. And so we have a data point, we took a picture, it's in Raphael's office.
Yeah.
We have a tax advisory firm who has given us every indication that we'll get it, but you never, want to count.
I mean, it's been allocated,
Yes,
so it makes it harder to claw back,
okay,
but
Never know.
You never know.
you don't count your chickens until it's in the bank.
yes, okay.
And unfortunately, it's, even with the remaining GovPV, it's no longer available.
Where's the income from the prepay deals? Is that in non-operating income?
No, it's actually, it would be in the cost of energy. It's not really income, it's a discount we get off of the PPA. So that is partly what's driving the lower cost of energy in fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27. It's about $12 million a year of savings. That's definitely a benefit we have there.
Like, so most, if not all of our cities, we go through like a mid-year budget review as well, and I think this goes to audit and finance maybe around February or March. Does that usually also come back to this committee and the full board as well, or is that process gonna stay the same for this committee?
So if I think so we do, historically, it's not mandated, but we have the last few years done a budget refresh in the January time period. And that has gone, I think, definitely goes to the board, because we use that to potentially set rates in February. I know it goes to the finance committee. I'm not sure 100%. It's always come to the
Typically, it goes
EC.
to finance, but not the budget refresh. It goes audit and finance to the board.
But on the board, you can see.
And that's usually tied to a rate change as well. So you refresh the budget in order to figure out what to do for the ensuing 6 months.
Correct.
Any other questions? If not, public comment?
We do have a public comment.
Sure, come on up.
Thank you. Good morning, Brian Schmidt from Menlo Spark. Great to see this presentation. Just had a couple quick comments. First, on the program funding for distributed energy resources, glad to see that money's starting to ramp up and hopefully increase further more in the future. I've been a broken record on this elsewhere, and I'll be broken record first time here, saying that I hope a lot of that is focused on low income and underserved communities, who are both more likely to be responsive to the budget incentives from DER and for purposes of equity, trying to promote cleaner energy in those areas. I also wanted to touch on Sean's discussion of the home upgrade program and being a high touch and somewhat costly, and that's almost definitional. If it's high touch, it's going to be costly. Menlo Park has actually spent a significant amount of our own staff resources in support of the Menlo Park programs. The good news is that even early on, we're hearing that a lot of the initial connections to the program are through word of mouth. And that there seems to be a high rate of customer satisfaction in this program. Combine those two things together, hopefully that word of mouth is bringing people in with less need for that high touch And should reduce some of the administrative expenses in that program. And of course, there are some implementation problems with that program earlier on that are unrelated to how its overall efficiency would be. And then the last comment I'd have, just coming from my water district background, is I'm used to basically drowning in details and budgets, too much detail. The stuff that's in the packet is very high level. So I don't know if this is located somewhere else where you can dive further down into the details of this budget, but it might be useful to see it. Thank you.
Anything online now?
No.
All right, this is an action item. Director Nash,
Motion?
you make a motion?
Yes, like to move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Director McCune. Roll call vote?
Atherton,
Yeah.
Belmont,
Yes.
Brisbane,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Yes.
Menlo Park,
Yes.
Millbrae.
Aye.
San Bruno,
Yes,
San Carlos. The motion passes. Thank you.
fantastic.
Okay, and apologize, you'll probably get that same presentation in 2 weeks, so bear with me. Okay, so now we're gonna move into rates, which is the revenue side of the equation. Again, it's somewhat unique that we're separating them, but first goal is to understand how much costs we need and is appropriate to run the business. And now we want to make sure we're setting rates sufficient to cover those costs. I'm gonna tag team here with Justin Kudo, who has presented to this committee and board before. Justin is our Associate Director, Strategic Analysis and Rates, and the expert in the CCA industry on all things rates related. So we're really fortunate to have Justin on the staff here. Before we get into setting rates, what the appropriate rates are, we want to give you some context of sort of the changing dynamic going on in the energy markets and how that's having an impact on rates. I alluded to it before in the cost of energy. That was all good news. Cost of energy going down as electricity prices were going down. There is a secondary impact, which we'll get into right now on the PCIA. So Justin, is this the page?
Yeah, though the animations have broken. Sorry about that. I was going to do this in some phases here. That's
Please.
okay. I'm sorry. I'll jump right into it though. So what I did want to introduce here is the concept of the net parity rate. The net parity rate, when our customers start taking service from PG&E, they no longer pay generation rates, they start paying PCIA rates. So that generation rate minus the PCIA is this orange line here. And that orange line is very important because if our rates are along that orange line, then they're paying exactly the same price for electricity that they would pay with PG&E. If rates are below that line, then customers are saving money. And when they're above that line, customers are paying a premium. In 2020 and 2021, when energy prices were very low, there was a pretty sharp dip to PG&E's rates, which we dealt with during those years. In subsequent years, following COVID, and also due to certain other energy market factors, energy prices went up quite a bit. And so when those prices go up, the excess electricity that PG&E has, because CCA customers have left, the value of that goes up a bit. And so our customers aren't responsible for paying as much because the leftover excess electricity is worth more. And so that's meant that we've had really favorable rate conditions when energy markets have been high in these years. What we've seen over the last year is that energy prices dipped pretty sharply starting in the beginning of 2025 and has continued on through this year. And we are expecting that to continue further beyond this year. Initially, we had a dip to really, there's three legs when we talk about the energy markets, as you've probably heard them many times here: energy prices, wholesale energy prices, resource adequacy, and premiums associated with renewable energy. What we saw coming into this year was a very sharp dip to resource adequacy, and that's what made our rates drop so much this current year. While that's going to recover a little bit moving into next year, we're now seeing the other two pieces of that stool drop this year: the brown power price and the renewable energy premiums. So as a result of that, rather than expecting that parity rate to recover to 10 cents next year. We're now expecting it to dip further to about 5.5 cents next year. That's a pretty conservative estimate, but we want to make sure we're being conservative with this and responsible. And as a result, that's going to impact how much that we can charge for electricity if we want to continue to deliver savings to customers. Every cent that we reduce rates results in a change to our revenues for the year of about $35 million. And so as a result, we need to revisit the discount that we're currently providing, which is about 10% relative to PG&E's generation rates. Back to you, Nick.
Okay. Okay, so, sorry, before I get there, so given the PCIA that we now expect to increase next year, we need to carefully look at what kind of discount we can offer our customers. And so I think to best illustrate that, thought I'd walk you through 3 different scenarios and what that does to our financials, and then we can talk about which scenario we think is most appropriate. The 3 scenarios we just picked, they're kind of arbitrary. I mean, they're even numbers, you get the feeling, but one is the 10% discount that we currently offer customers. And you'll see how that compares to some of our peers. The second scenario is a 5% discount, which is what we have historically been at for almost our entirety of our history. And then the third scenario is a just modest 1% discount. We really never want to go higher than PG&E, so that's sort of at least ideally the lowest discount or the highest rate that we charge. So we're going to go through some scenarios. The exact dollar amounts I don't think matter that much, but you'll get an idea of the magnitude. So this is the electricity sales that we would collect from customers if we were to set our rates at a 10% discount. And so you can see 211, 227, you can see all the numbers. This is going out 5 years because it's important to think in the future. You can guess as we were to increase, if we were to lower the discount, but increase our rates, it's slightly higher. And then you can see, not rocket science, at a 1% discount, that's the difference in net revenues that we would collect. The important line here is the revenue requirement. This is the money, the cost that it takes to run the agency. And so that you may remember that 316, it was 315.9 to be exact in the prior presentation. And you can see that's forecasted out for the next 4 years. And you can see there's a difference between how much we need to collect and how much we would collect under these 3 scenarios, at least in the first 2 years, first 3 years maybe, and then they kind of get close in the 4th and the 5th year.
And sorry, just so you can articulate, and that growth trajectory is based on a percent assumption, correct, each year?
The revenue requirement increase is based on
And what is that?
it's mostly driven by cost of energy and the forward price curve that I mentioned. There is some growth in operating costs, modest 5% or so, but most of it's in the cost of energy and assuming the 2% load growth.
Thank you.
So what does that mean for our net position? Net position, again, is sort of a code word for profitability, or how much revenues less costs. It's basically the difference between the black line, the revenue requirement, and those bars, because the black line is how much revenue we need, and the bars are the how much we would collect. And so under a 10% discount, you can see we would lose about $118 million over the next 2 years. If we were to lower that discount to 5%, we're still losing 99 and 100 million. And if we were to do 1%, you can see the numbers there. And so cumulatively, if you add up all those numbers across the board at a 10% discount, it's a cumulative loss of 366 million. And I don't need to read all those numbers there. We do have the rate stabilization fund, but right now it's currently at $128 million. This just hopefully gives you some context of where we are financially, which is a challenging, over the next few years, a challenging situation. What does that mean for cash? This is again the 3 scenarios that I talked about, 10, 5, and 1% discount. This is days cash on hand, which I think is a better metric because cash can be misleading. This is as a percentage of costs. It's also a good metric because we have the board approved target of 250 days, and we have the board approved minimum of 180 days, and those black horizontal lines. And you can see here, if we were to set our rates at the 10% discount over the 5-year period, and you don't have, it could change, but this is just for illustrative purposes, we would dip below that 180-day target minimum in 2 years. At 5%, you can see we dip below the 180 by year 5, And even at the 1% discount, we would at least be we'd be in sort of below the 250 target, but we would be a little above the minimum. And so this is our cash position, which, to be honest, I think is more important than changing that position or the other metrics that I talked about. This is our livelihood, making sure we have enough cash in the bank to support the operations. So that's the impact on the finances. Next page, I'm gonna have Justin talk about. You may ask, well, what do our peers do? So Justin, maybe if you could take this page, since you're most familiar with all of our these are the Northern California CCAs, the ones that are in PG&E service territory and have to deal with this PCIA headwind.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I went and did an inventory of where CCAs were at in their general rate strategies. This is for the sample kind of residential household rate, but generally speaking, CCAs are pretty consistent across all rates. There's pretty minor differences. This is an appropriate proxy for all of their rates. About half CCAs have rates that are at or above PG&E. You can see it's exactly, there's 5 that are more than PG&E. There's one that's right even with PG&E, and there's 5 that are less. The CCAs that are more expensive are on the generation costs are more significantly expensive, are about 30% more than PG&E in terms of generation rate. But I will note that generation rates are a pretty small chunk of the bill. They're about 20-25% this year. And so we are on average seeing CCAs at about 10% more expensive than PG&E, which for the typical household comes out to about $5 per month. You'll note that we're about 10%, of course, below PG&E. And while our usage is a little bit lower than the typical CCA per household because of our climate zone, so we're saving customers on average a little more than $4 per month. Next slide.
I mean, I guess I would just add here that, well, I think this is a great slide. It shows us in #1 position, as we could say, the biggest discount. It does show a different strategy that a lot of our peers have taken, I think, given the financial headwinds that we're all facing. A lot of them are coming up with a sort of a nominal, I mean, I'm not in the boardroom, but sort of the 1% you could argue is they can still say they're cheaper. And so that's an attractive number to use. A couple are 3 to 5%, so San Jose and Valley Clean Energy. But then a few have sort of taken the cost of service rate making approach and are just setting rates higher than PG&E and hoping that they don't have customer revolt, so to speak.
I would expect to see more differentiation with the 1, 3, and 5%. Any explanation for that?
Not really. I think most CCAs have had discussions. A lot had rates that were more substantially below PG&E going into this year. As rates have become more challenging, as Nick noted, they've adopted more conservative kind of nominal rates that are nominally below PG&E. I think that we and Valley as well were the only ones that more distinctly thought about just how much where we wanted to set rates exactly to make sure that that savings was more significant. In the case of the 3 that are most significantly above PG&E, they've stopped looking at the PCIA in terms of their rate comparison calculations because the PCI has been so volatile.
I mean, I'm not on the board, but my guess, the conversation went of, geez, this is challenging. We still want to be at a discount. Let's come up with 1 or 0. We don't want to be more. There's probably no more magic to that.
I want to make one, just unpack a little bit about what you just said. So general comment, there's diversity across CCAs. I've been in the space for a really long time, so I'm just gonna say right up, I'm disappointed to see the left-hand side of that page, because anyway, I'll leave it there. But the other thing that I think PCE does, and I know a number of our colleagues do as well, but not uniformly, is that we set rates net of the PCIA, which meant that when your board decided earlier this year to make a 42% rate cut in order to stay competitive, in order to include the impact of the PCIA, in order to know that we were going to be planning for that rate stabilization fund and drawing it down. I mean, it's like, turning dials on a finely tuned radio or something. I feel really proud of what we've been able to do, and it's clear that we're not gonna be able to keep that up, at least in the near term. But the staff knows how I feel about this, so I won't go into any further, but I think it's really important that that we set rates net of the PCIA, and I'm hopeful that as we continue to talk about this at Cal CCA statewide, to me, this is an area of vulnerability and where some kind of standard practice and best practice would be shared out. So we're working on that as well behind the scenes.
Are there any CCAs that don't set rates net of the PCIA?
There are a few, or
Where they
well,
just,
they would claim a discount, right? But they don't include the impact of the PCIA, so if
so their
you-
customers pay the PCIA and they
That's
don't
what-
cover that?
and it's a communications difference.
Marketing.
And can
That's-
you tell who's who? Say it again.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for all of them, but I'm guessing the 4 CCAs on the left in their marketing material, if we were to go on their website, they'd probably say there's still a discount, but they're just
And I think
forgetting
we
about
should
the
be
PCIA.
I
careful.
should,
to-
yeah, and I should be fair with that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think most of them still do provide full cost comparisons that do show exactly where they're at and where the impact is on the bill. It's more just in terms of when they went into rate setting, they have had the thought of, we can't keep dealing with the volatility that PG&E is introducing with the PCIA here. And, even beyond PG&E, the electricity market in general and how that fits into the PCIA and the Public Utilities Commission's policies around it. And so they're setting rates based on their revenue needs. What we are doing currently, and this is why we have a rate stabilization fund, because unfortunately, the regulatory policies that have established the PCIA create an additional rate volatility. And we are put in the position of hedging that for our customers and mitigating that. And so that means that some years we've had to put into rate stabilization fund, into reserves, an amount that I think is more than we'd all like to probably have in there, being having a lot of days cash on hand. But this is where we use that to help mitigate that for our customers and maintain rate stability. Sorry, thank you.
Director McKinn?
So just in talking to constituents, and these are homeowners, these are residential ratepayers. They, talking to them about what we do, the clean and renewable, that stuff is really great. And the fact that you've got a discount from PG&E, that's great. The amount of the discount from PG&E, I don't think matters to them. I don't think they focus on the number. Big industrial and commercial users are more likely to have somebody look at the rate. But thinking about a strategy going forward here, I mean, what would it look like hypothetically, just throwing an idea? If for next year we went to a 5% discount, and in the years after that, we targeted a 1% discount. So it's not an all at once thing. Next year, we target a 5% discount and we use the rate stabilization fund. And then we, see how it goes and maybe target 1% of the year's fall.
You're looking.
God, that's a smart idea.
On that yet.
I'm sure you got there before I did that.
Hold that thought.
There may be a slide you'll be interested in.
Okay.
Yes, okay, so
Before we
going
go
with.
to the next slide, though, I just want to make sure if we had any other comments, that I have a comment about this. So go ahead, please.
I just want to say, I really appreciate, Sean, the CEO, and also with your experience, you giving us your input. That's really, really helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions on this slide? Because I want to make it.
I had a question. I'm not sure, was this slide, there was a comment on this, when we were talking about this slide. The rate stabilization fund and the days cash on hand, is the rate stabilization fund in the days cash on hand calculation? It
Yes.
is, okay.
Good question. Yeah, it is.
Just one comment, so for me, I don't think that the residents care as much about the discount, but I think it was very helpful when it went from 5% to 10%. When everyone was feeling the crunch, because then you could tell residents like, actually they're getting an even deeper discount because they really care and they're trying to help, right? So I think that was useful, but now we could come back out of that and go back to the 5% that we had before. And still be able to tell customers like, look, this is a significant discount that your CCA is giving.
I mean, the desire is always to do what we can. These guys know. And now we're just in a period of the next couple of years of having to just deal with also operational reality. So it's a balance.
Yeah, I'd say I tend to look at reserves and rate stabilization is when we're utilizing them or depleting them or adding to them, it gives us more flexibility for how we are going to keep rates stable for customers in future years. And you know, we could give a 20% discount if we wanted to, but that would mean we'd have a lot less flexibility to help mitigate rate changes for customers in future years.
Director Matthew.
To what Director Thayer said, the other offset is to inform people that when we can lower a lot, we do, but we also are cognizant of putting money into programs, helping people save by changing their appliances and electrifying their homes.
I think that's a good point. Right now that the board looks at this every year, basically, and no longer says like, let's just keep 5%. Let's look at where we're at, where we want to, do we want to take money from the rate stabilization fund or not? You can actually tell people like, just like you do with your home budget, right? The board looks at this every year and figures out like, what can we do for the next year that makes the most sense.
Okay, my turn, thank you. I'm extremely proud of this slide right here, where it's like, wow, you know, I'm concerned about the others, like. If that's $5 a month for 10%, and maybe somebody could help up with the math, does that mean those at 30%, that's at $15 a month?
Roughly, yes.
They're gonna lose customers. $15 a month, I mean, you're looking at over 12 months, I mean, what's 15 times 12, anybody said?
180.
That's definitely worth looking at switching, right? If you're really concerned, so, I think this is an incredible slide. I wanted to, this board put together that rate stabilization fund exactly for where we're at now. And there was some criticism like, hey, PCE, you know, you're a bank or whatever it is, like, why do you have so much money? And it's like,
This is why.
this is one of the reasons to stay in business and to provide a discount. So I just wanted to just make sure I said that. And I'm looking forward to the next slide.
And along with what you're saying, those rate stabilization funds were put in place while still giving the discount
Yeah.
to our
Right,
customers.
right.
So it's,
Wasn't either one, yes.
yeah.
Very responsible.
We expanded the rate stabilization fund over the last couple of years because we've been doing a lot of aggressive forward forecasting and we were concerned that we might be in this situation in a couple of years. And so fortunately, we're well prepared for it.
One more slide before we get to our recommendation,
Okay.
and this question came up at the finance committee, so we thought we'd proactively, well, what's the difference in customer bill amongst the different scenarios? And so Justin, I don't know, it's sort of self-explanatory, but.
So this is kind of what I was referring to earlier in that generation charges have become such a minority of the bill. You can see the differences here between us setting rates that would result in a discount of about 10% or 5% or 1%. Depending on how much we utilize the rate stabilization fund. You can see that under a 10% discount, the customer savings is about a little over $4. Under a 5%, it's a little over $2. And at 1%, it's nominal, it's less than 50 cents. But overall, we are not talking about a very significant difference between a 5 and 10% in terms of impacts on customer bill. And this is the average usage. You know, of course, apartments have, smaller apartments are gonna have lower usage than this, large houses will have much higher usage.
So I think it's gonna be interesting with the next governor, whoever that might be. And there has been a focus on utility rates. That blue bar is still, those are T&D charges. Those continue to go up, 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 up. We do our best at the, you know, sort of top piece of that, which is what, 25%, something like that of the overall bill. So that's another thing I think we're gonna be watching legislatively. To make sure that the focus stays where it needs to be, which is really on T&D. And I think that's an important thing for you to be able to articulate in the community as well. Right? So we do what we can with the slice that we have. And that big blue section is where we need to pay attention.
This is something I've been articulating a lot as well about rates where PG&E, as a result of these market conditions, is in a position where their overall bundled rates have come down a bit. But that blue bar, the T&D, has actually gone up. And so they've been taking advantage of it to say, wow, we lowered rates this year. Well, it didn't really take any proactive action to lower rates. It was the market conditions that changed. But the part that T&D does make its revenue on, does make its profit on, that part continues to go up, and that's something we are watching very closely.
Okay, so hopefully I only have a couple more pages, but
You gave us all this time today.
the goal of this was to set the groundwork, and hopefully you can guess where we're going. The financial impact of a 10% versus something less. The data point of where our peers are, we're kind of an outlier at this point, and the difference in the bill impact of the three scenarios. And so our recommendation is to set rates at a 5% discount. Hopefully we can get them into the rates on July 1, if the board approves them. We are only talking about setting rates until January. At that point, we will know exactly what the PCIA is. Right now, we're estimating, hopefully it's an educated guess, but we're estimating what the PCIA is, what PG generation rates. In January, we'll know for sure. We'll also come back to the board with the budget refresh, so we'll see how our financials are. And at that point, we will set rates for the back half of the fiscal year. And so we're only talking about 5 months. For argument's sake, at this point, we're assuming conservatively a 1% discount in January. So this is that recommendation that was, or not that comment that was made before. Again, we're not setting rates at 1% today, but we just had to assume something in the forecast. And so you can see here, if we were to set rates at a 5% discount in July, moving to 1%, you can see the resulting revenues in the top row. The costs are all the numbers that we talked about in that first presentation, and the resulting change in net position of negative $95 million, and then the cash and days cash on hand below. And so this is our recommendation. The one thing I haven't included on this page is the rate stabilization fund. And so I do want to talk about that. Just to give everyone a reminder, it sounds like people remember what it is, but it's been a year or so since we've talked about it. The board approved the rate stabilization fund in May, so almost 2 years ago. This is to be used to defer revenues when times are good, when revenues exceed costs, and to potentially put money into the balance when we are changing that position is greater than 3% of revenues. And we came up with a guidance of, we didn't want the rate stabilization fund to be larger than 15% of revenues. Going back, the first year we had it, we deferred $68 million, as you may remember, 2 years ago, a long time ago. Last year, we had another strong year financially, and we requested a waiver, and you all agreed to waive that 15% limit. And so we deferred another $60 million, so combined $128 million, which I'm thankful we have. As a data point, I always think it's helpful to benchmark. Our peers, many of them, not all of them, have a rate stabilization fund. And just as a reference, their balances range from 9% up to 52%. I think Sonoma is the highest. We are expecting the current year we're in to have another favorable financial year, largely due to cost of energy being lower than we expected. And we're expecting a positive change in net position of north of $20 million. And so we are suggesting a continued waiver of that 15% limit so that we can defer more money into the rate stabilization fund to be used in the next 2 years. And as you saw on those graphs, we need it. And so that's our recommendation. And just as a reminder, this is somewhat just accounting. It does no impact on cash. We're just moving money from an unrestricted cash balance into the rate stabilization fund. It's all included in our days cash on hand metric. And so if we were to incorporate rate stabilization fund, this is the same numbers as those page before, the 5% discount moving to a 1%. You can see the change in net position before the rate stabilization fund of negative $95 million in the budget year. We would use basically 96 of it so that we would have enough revenues to cover our costs. We are also recommending deferring the $20 million in the current year because financials have been favorable. And we won't have quite enough to make it in fiscal year 28, and we'll end up with a loss of $34 million. Not the end of the world. We have enough cash. So this is sort of just accounting, but that is where we're looking to end financially right now. And again, this assumes our recommendation of a 5% discount starting July, and at least for the next 5 or 6 months.
Well, and then going to a 1%.
That's what's assumed in this forecast. The board has not approved it or anything. We will come back in January, so I want to make that clear. But we had to assume
But that's-
something in the
that's on the
forecast.
slide.
That's on the slide, yeah. And so all we're asking, and this is sort of the recommendation and looking for approval, we can discuss before we get to it, was setting rates at the 5%, moving from the 10% to a 5%, which will result in a slight increase in rates effective July 1 if we can get them in time.
All right. Looking around, if any comments, questions on this last slide? We can take public comment. No one in the room? No one online? Okay, looking for a motion.
Actually, I have
Go ahead.
one more thought, and I don't know if it's something we can even discuss or if there's anything to say. But I just always have this feeling that PG&E is pushing CCAs with the PCIA, and they're able to do it, and they've been able to do it legislatively. And it just,
CPUC.
and yes, yes. Is there?
Is there anything we can
Is there
do?
anything we can do?
Yes.
Well, I know there's legislation,
Right.
but that's more just for visibility. The transparency.
Transparency, yes.
Yeah,
Which can help with, arguing against their
Correct.
numbers. Will that help? Maybe, maybe not.
I mean, there is legislation this year. It's incremental, I would say. It's looking good so far, but
Right.
it doesn't do a lot to
It-
really overhaul PCIA. There is Commissioner Baker at the PUC has just opened up a proceeding. There will be a number of workshops. It's actually, he's actually got a fairly wide scope for that looks at what are we doing? Is the methodology correct? CCAs are actively going to be participating in that, including us. We think potentially that as well as, the slide that you saw with such a dramatic rate differential, so much of that being driven by PCIA, that there may be a little bit of an opening to really take it on in Sacramento, because so far it's kind of been like talk to the hand. And I don't know if you have something brief you want to add, because I know you could do a encyclopedia on this thing, but we're hoping so, but it's just never been a topic that anyone's really been able to fully take on. Or
does it
willing.
make any sense that it's continuing? Because I understand why it was there to address the costs while people were coming off, but does,
The big thing that happened, and then I am gonna turn it over to you, but the big thing that happened, I think it was 2018 or 2019, was a change in regulation, I believe, and probably even statute that said, utility-owned generation, which all utilities have, including, PG&E, that UOG could be counted as part of the PCIA, which puts it pretty much into a state of perpetuity.
You have a hand.
So-
what is UOG?
That's
You
Jen.
have
Oh,
a- yeah, this-
are we
we
getting
might
off
be
topic?
straying a little bit. Let's see.
Yeah, I think we are straying a little bit from the agenda. Happy to agendize this for a full conversation.
Good idea.
Justin is available after the meeting for additional information.
I wanted to say it. so-
We are looking at tools. This probably will come back to the executive committee at some point when it's right for discussion of minimizing the volatility of the PCIA. A lot of our peers do this where they use the PCIA as a hedge. And so remember how I said, if energy prices go down, that's good for cost of energy, bad for the PCIA. If we weren't hedged as much, if we were thinking of the PCIA as a hedge, our cost of energy would be going down even more next year. And so that's something we're talking about, thinking about incorporating. It's not changing the PCIA, but we don't want to count on that happening. So we're looking at what are other tools in the toolbox to minimize this volatility, the up and down.
And it would minimize the cost of hedges too.
One other thing I'll add,
PCIA stabilization fund.
Well, that's basically.
I mean, that frankly, that is what the rate stabilization fund is as it stands. I mean, there are other things, of course, that it's there to stabilize, but the PCIA is by far the biggest factor there. One other thing I did want to note too is, we do get rate forecasts. We do work with consultants to forecast rates. We do get PG&E's rate filings. The frustrating thing about all these different forecasts that we get and what PG&E includes, they don't often take into account pending regulatory decisions. They don't take into account the same future market conditions. And so we do spend a lot of time trying to examine what we think are the most likely outcomes, what risks there are, what's the impact of a potential pending decision so that we understand how it'll affect it, and we incorporate that within our budget. I'd like to think, we're probably leading the industry in that.
Just to add, I'm just so admire staff and just how you are handling all of this, the information that we always get. It just it's really amazing.
We have an A team.
Looking for a mo-
I,
Yes,
I
sir.
will just say, this sounds like a really good scenario to me. If you need a motion, I would move approval.
Looking for a second?
I'll second.
Fantastic. Roll call vote, please.
Atherton,
Yes.
Belmont,
Aye.
Brisbane,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Hillsborough,
Yes.
Menlo Park,
Yes.
Millbrae,
Yes.
San Bruno,
Yes,
San Carlos. The motion passes.
congratulations.
Can't believe it's already June.
Yes, it's already June.
Here we are.
We're going to the last item.
Our final item on the agenda are committee members' reports.
I don't really have a report. If anybody else does, I just wanted to say thank you all. This was a great discussion, and thank you staff for, leading us through it.
Thank you, Nick, Justin, Haley, and all the departments who really did, I think, bottoms up budgeting, and we're getting closer and closer to really squeezing down and closing those variances, which is always our goal.
All right,
Thank you, Nick. All right.
we are adjourned. Thank you.
It's early.
Yeah.